A very big welcome to the C&J Speedway review for this week number 8. Can you believe we made it this far?
I can't believe it myself. It's amazing what we've been going through, you know?
I know. Well, my name is Chris Burns from the C&J Speedway Report, also the Loki and Jabroni Show, live streaming Tuesday nights, dropping in your eardrums on Thursdays across the screen with the yellow flag already flying. It's like you're giving up already. Corey Huffnagel. Corey, how are you doing this week?
I am doing pretty good. All I can just say is what an exciting weekend at Talladega. Not only Saturday, but Sunday was just exciting, from start to finish. I was like literally on the edge of my seat throughout the whole entire race. And honestly, I don't care where Talladega is in the playoffs next year, whether if it's either the second race or the elimination race, it definitely should stay in the playoffs for sure.
Oh, without question. Again, like you mentioned, it's always exciting. This weekend was no different. When we get into the Cup race, I will share what I shared with you earlier in the weekend before we got to today. And it was difficult for me this weekend. I got to see the truck race, finally. That was fun, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Switching my time between the Yankees, the Falcons, and the Cup race, but I always have my ear, so anytime something happened, my head is on a swivel. I'm Falcons getting their butt handed to them, over to watching Kevin Harvick get his butt handed to him, or the litany of crashes. The little ones, the Jamie McMurray hit, but when we talk about the Cup race, those final laps were just outrageous. And you're right, edge of your seat racing the entire time.
Absolutely.
So before we go any further, since Corey's plugging everything in the kitchen sink on his graphic, I'm going to hold this up again. LokiandJabroni.com, our Fandango link. If you are a Star Wars fan, get your tickets through that link, and for a limited time, you get a free poster. There's no hidden fees. There's no extra charges. Amazon, WWE, and all our other affiliates kick back just a little bit of your purchase to help not only C&J Speedway review, but the Loki and Jabroni Show cover production costs.
That's right. And also, don't forget to follow me on NASCAR Indy on Twitter. And don't forget our website, NASCARindy.org. And we're also on Facebook on NASCAR IndyCar Central and Instagram at NASCAR IndyCar.
You're becoming a pro at this. You're starting to scare me.
Scary.
How long before you steal all our good ideas and start your own show?
Well, we'll just have to see what happens within the next few months. But, I mean, let's be real. I'm pretty much new to this whole podcast, but, I'd probably say like one step at a time, and then, we'll see where it goes.
If you ever leave me, I will hunt you down and kill you. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
So let's talk Truck Series in Talladega. That, to me, was a very exciting race. Again, I don't watch a lot of the trucks. Impressed with the way the trucks handled on a 2.5-mile speedway, especially that extreme dogleg. It's Daytona, where I've watched the trucks battle before, but something about this race was really, really intense. I don't know what you thought of it. I'm sure you enjoyed it. You enjoy everything about the trucks.
See, the thing about the Truck Series, and whenever the racing at Daytona and Talladega, it's so unpredictable, and you just can't really tell like what's going to happen and so forth. But we actually saw a low-funded team, which was Henderson Motorsports, win on Saturday, and that was with Parker Kligerman. See, this is the example of what Talladega and Daytona is all about. You'll see the guys that are in like the top 15, top 20, run up near the front. They get mentioned, and they get all the credits and everything. And, we saw Kligerman ended up winning the race on Saturday for his first win ever since 2012, when the last time he won there was with Red Horse. But the thing, I go back to the truck race on Saturday, of course, there was an elimination race. 2 were going to be eliminated after this Saturday whatsoever. And, we saw, Chase Briscoe, who I thought was going to make it to the next round, possibly the championship 4. He ends up getting out because of engine failure or oil leak or something underneath the truck. And then, of course, Kaz Grala, who I thought was going to win the race on Saturday, even though he had a really good truck at Daytona. So what happened was, he ends up hitting the wall because somebody checked up like right in front of him. And the next thing you know, Truex ended up getting into the back of him whatsoever. But I thought the truck race on Saturday, it was fun. You know, everybody was all drafting each other like 190 miles an hour, even though that they can't have the no tandem rule or no lock bumpers whatsoever. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was exciting. And if you think about it, the trucks were slipping and sliding almost every single lap, and almost everybody was getting loose. Like they were going to crash like every single lap whatsoever. But I thought the race was exciting. And now, you know, we're getting ready for the round of 6, and it should be very interesting to see who the 4 drivers are going to be competing for the championship in November.
Again, for the first truck race I've watched in God knows how long, I found it to be ultra competitive. There were guys running up front that I thought, you know, where did this guy come from? And somebody mentioned to me who is not so much as big a race fan that he follows the trucks of the Xfinity Series, and he sees that Parker Kligerman won, and he looked at me and said, "Sir, guy from the Cup Series?" Yes,
Yeah.
same one. So if you're watching this, yes, same one. But Parker Kligerman was a guy that everybody had pegged years ago, going back to 2012, to be someone who was going to climb the ranks. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he just lost his spark. Maybe he's better at the broadcasting. But to see him go out there and run pretty much the race of his life on Saturday was amazing. What bothered me was seeing some of the bigger names at the bottom of the race results. Truex and Gralla, big damage for both of them.
Yeah.
Seeing Ben Rhodes down the bottom, Chase Briscoe down near the bottom, and then when you go to the top half, you're seeing. I'm looking at a lot of names that I had literally never heard of before, up in the top 20. But then you get more up to the top 10. There's Matt Crafton, there's John Hunter, there's Austin Cindric. You know, there's Christopher Bell, right where you think he's going to be. So when I hold up this card and I say these are my picks, like I said with Talladega on the Cup side, pick who you want to win, and then for your sleeper, go with the field, because it's never, ever easy when you have top guys. And I'll go back down this list: Kaz Gralla, Ryan Truex, Ben Rhodes, Chase Briscoe. All of these guys finished in the bottom 20.
Yeah.
Or even in this, there's 31. So they finish in the bottom 15. If this were any other racetrack and 4 or 5 guys from your top 10 or 12 finished that low in standings, that is, the top 12 in the standings, you would say, okay, everybody had a bad day, but it's Talladega. And you look at this and you go, oh, well, you know, something bit them, whether it was the big one or just dumb.
I mean, if you look at it, you know, like I said, it's so unpredictable. Like, you just can't tell, like, when the big wreck's going to happen. But, like, when you see those guys racing the big pack, you're pretty much on the edge of your seat going, okay, if one driver does not mess up and cause a huge wreck, you know, one of them's going to be pretty lucky. But you go back to John Hunter Nemechek. So this was a kid. He was in the bottom 8. He was actually one of those 2 guys that was in that cutoff race. So, and it wasn't really easy for him because during that race, he suffered a lot of damage to his truck. But I guess the crew guys, you know, they managed to fix it. And not to mention, with a damaged truck that he had, he managed to pull off a 6th place finish. I mean, honestly, like, I was really surprised by that, because I think this kid, you know, could possibly go to the Final Four. I mean, I was looking at his results, you know, Martinsville, he did pretty good back in the spring. You know, Texas, he did okay. And then Phoenix, he had a top 5 last year. So I'm looking at this kid this year, you know, even though he didn't get off to a great start this season, I mean, considering the fact that he has the 2 wins, I mean, I would say now, you know, he's going to be my sleeper, you know, in this next round coming up.
And that's a great point. When you consider, when you're talking about John Hunter Nemechek, he does have that pedigree. Yeah. Joe Nemechek is his father. John Nemechek, God rest his soul, is his uncle. He knows what to do. He's grown up around those. He's probably been racing since before he could walk.
Yeah.
I wasn't so much, like you mentioned, he did have some troubles. To come in with a 6th place finish was great. The one that impressed me the most this weekend was the 66 of Vinnie Miller. Another name I had never heard of. Avoid some really heady stuff and make his way to a 7th place finish.
And like I said, with super speedway racing, you're going to see some guys in the top 15, top 20, top 30, running the top 10, guys that you never heard of. And, and there's another one I point out, Clay Greenfield, finished in the top 8. And, most of these results in the top 10, there's guys that are like top 20, top 30 teams. And then most of them, are pretty much, playoff drivers, because you look at it, you got Crafton, who finished 9th, John Hunter finished 6th, Austin Cindric 5th, and then Christopher Bell rounds up the runner-up spot.
Again, we keep coming back to Christopher Bell, and he's going to come up again later on in the show, but anybody stop this guy?
I don't think so. I mean, I look at the next round coming up. I think this is going to be this round where he's going to be the one to watch, because if you look at, Martinsville, he almost won there in the spring. Texas, he won back in June, and then Phoenix, he had a good run back in November. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he either wins at Martinsville or if he wins at Texas, because those are going to be two of his strong racetracks coming up in this next round.
Phoenix into the mix as well, because Phoenix, like Martinsville, is a flatter track. But again, I look at these last 4 races and I think to myself, there's no reason he can't sweep the last 4 races or minimally take 3 out of the 4.
I don't think he could sweep either. I mean, I think he'll probably win either 1 or 2 of the 3 races, in my opinion.
And that is why you are here.
Yes.
Anything that stuck out to you in the truck race that you wanted to talk about?
So one driver, of course, who I was disappointed at, definitely had to be Chase Briscoe. And, this was going to be a kid, in my prediction, was going to make it to the next round, possibly make it to the championship 4. And, if he hadn't had that oil leak early on in the race, he could have had a good shot to make it into the next round, wherever he finished in the top 5 or basically win and so forth. And then, of course, I have to go with Parker Kligerman, because, the 75 truck, he was running literally mid-pack throughout the whole race, and then near the end, and I was actually kind of surprised. I was like, is this Parker Kligerman going up to the front? And then of course he ends up winning the race. And then, like you said, he's pretty much the announcer on NBC. And what was actually kind of cool was that some of the guys from NBC were at Victory Lane congratulating him. There were guys, I think, Rutledge Wood, and then Chris Devoda or Carolyn Mano. I forget what the other one was in there, but yeah, I mean, I thought that was pretty cool though, for Kligerman. And like I said, the reason why I love super speedway racing is, you just never know who you're going to see at the front. I mean, you could see the top guys run up near the front, and then you could see the guys that are in the top 30, top 20 whatsoever, make a name for themselves. Cause these are guys that, that run mid-pack throughout the whole entire season. But I just thought the truck race on Saturday was I thought it was exciting, but now I'm really looking forward to this next round. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see who makes it into the championship 4.
Without question. And as I bring up your round of 6, as you mentioned, Chase Briscoe and Kaz Grala are eliminated. They are no longer championship contenders.
Yep.
That sucks, because I know you had high hopes for Kaz Grala going forward.
Yep.
Possibly being 4. But as it stands right now, Austin Cindric sits in 6th, 40 points back. Ben Rhodes sits in 5th, 34 points back. John Hunter Nemechek, 33 points back in 4th. Matt Kraft in 3rd, 33 points back, virtual tie. Second in points, 20 points back. And Christopher Bell still leading the way with 3,047 points. The points being as close as they are right now, we always say anything can happen. It's a win and you're in situation. But of these 6 that we're looking at right now, Bell, Sauter, Crafton, Nemechek, Rhodes, and Cindric, obviously we're both going to say Bell is the lock. That is too easy. We've said it for now 8 weeks. Christopher Bell is basically taking home this championship unless something tragic happens.
Yeah.
The sleeper of the group.
My sleeper of the group, you definitely have to watch out for Ben Rhodes, because if you look at this next round coming up, we got Texas, which is a 1.5 mile racetrack. And the last time the guys were on the 1.5 mile was when he won at Las Vegas earlier this year, which was a couple weeks ago. But I would probably say that, now that he's on to a good start in this playoffs, I really do expect this team to run, near the front. Hopefully they can win a race to advance to the championship four. But I think, you look at Rhodes, I think he's going to be a sleeper, come this next round coming up. And I really think this team's got on to something. I mean, even though he's probably one of the top thorough sport guys that's, running right now, I mean, I really think this is going to be a kid to watch coming up.
I cannot disagree with you. Now, moving forward, we go to Sunday. The fantastic, wonderful Alabama 500. Now, I told you in all the years I've watched racing, I never in my life have seen a race end with only 14 or 15 cars. I've been to races in Darlington where there were 3 cars on the lead lap. I've been to races where one guy has just basically blown the field away and lapped the field.
Yeah.
I've never seen 15 cars left on the track. That's how big some of these crashes were, kids. Really, really intense. Parade, I'll give you 3 people I was sort of disappointed with, not the way they ran, but because of their bad luck. The first one is Jamie McMurray.
Yeah.
That was just, he had a car that was decent. That was just, that had to be a downer, not only for him, the team, but for his fans, because he's one of those guys right now, correctly, and I'm going to go back here. Mario, NASCAR.com. I'm going to try to bring it up now. Clinch your spot. And if he hasn't already been eliminated, going down, and the computer doesn't want to work with me, what else is new? Children to work. All right, so as I go down the list, Ricky Stenhouse and Kyle Busch are all, the only way you clinch a playoff spot is to win a race. McMurray needed a really fantastic, strong finish Sunday, and with all the trouble he got into, he basically put himself behind the 8 ball going forward this weekend to Kansas.
I think, you look at, Sunday, of course, Talladega was pretty wild, and of course, if you go back to Indianapolis, I forget how many cars finished on the lead lap or how many cars were running, but if you looked at Sunday's race, I mean, this was basically the wild card, in the playoffs, because, it's either, who's going to have a solid finish, to advance, and then, of course, who's going to have to win the race, to clinch a spot, in the next round and so forth. And like I said, the points were going to flip-flop back and forth throughout the whole entire day. I mean, with that big wreck with 15 laps to go, it took a lot of playoff contenders out of contention. You look at guys like Kevin Harvick, you look at Stenhouse, who I thought was going to be the team to beat, especially the fact that they've won the last 2 restricted plate races. And then you got Kyle Busch, you got Matt Kenseth, and then you have Jimmy Johnson. Those guys, they were pretty much in the top 10, top 5 in the points. And now with some of these guys, down in that cutoff line, you go to Kansas this weekend, there's going to be guys that have to have a solid finish in order to make it to the next round. And not only that, you just have to get stage points, because stage points, in the first 2, it'll pretty much determine, if you make it into the next round. And I look at, the bottom 8, and let's face it, Jimmy Johnson's on that cutoff line right now. So let's say if he crashes on Sunday or if he has a disastrous race, I mean, that could be pretty much it for him. And of course, he's not going to, win his A championship. But I'm looking at the guys in the bottom 12. You got guys like Kyle Busch, Matt Kenseth, and Stenhouse, and McMurray. Those guys are either going to have to win a race or they're going to have a solid finish, depending on what the rest of the top 7 do on Sunday.
Right. And I believe in this prognosticator thing I saw earlier on NASCAR.com, it said Jimmy Johnson would have to take at least one stage and finish 3rd or higher, just to clinch a spot in that final 8. That's a 7-time champion we're talking about. This is a guy who was looking strong very early on, and it seemed the rug got pulled out from underneath him. Not that I'm complaining too much. I'm not a Jimmy Johnson fan, but it does kind of makes me wonder, Is he on the decline or is he at that plateau? He's probably, in my mind, on the plateau. He's not on the downward yet. Where Jeff Gordon was 10, 12 years ago, where you've won your championships, you're still a contender, you're still winning races, to be there at the end.
I would say, he's on a little bit of a decline. So I've been watching him throughout the whole entire season and in the playoffs. And I have to admit, this is probably not one of his best playoffs that the 48 team has had. And I just look at him right now in that cutoff line, I just think it's going to be either a make or break for the 48 team, coming into Kansas on Sunday. And he's won there before. And all he just needs to do is he just needs to have a solid finish because he's only a few points to the good, ahead of the cutoff. So, I mean, I'm looking at him, even though if he goes to the next round, I would say that he's probably going to have maybe a 50% chance of making it to the Final Four. I mean, even though Martinsville is in there, which he's won there plenty of times, and then, of course, Texas he's won there before, and then Phoenix he's won there before, I think he's got a 50% shot. Now, if he does go to the championship four, do I think he's going to win the championship? I don't think so because, even if he does go, he's going to have to beat the guys Martin Truex and Kyle Larson to win the championship because I still think those are the two guys that they're going to have to beat, this year.
Oh, absolutely. But again, he's the last guy in this round of 12 with one race to go, this being Kansas this weekend. That's the elimination race. He's the lowest guy who, again, the prognosticator says if he can take a stage and finish third or higher, obviously, if he wins, he's in. But Kyle Busch has to win. Matt Kenseth has to win. Ricky Stenhouse has to win. Jamie McMurray has to win this week. And you can only have one winner.
Yeah.
And even if these four, just mentioning those four, Kyle Busch, Matt Kenseth, Ricky Stenhouse, Jamie McMurray, you look at these guys, and they haven't had the most spectacular time since the playoffs began some weeks ago. So I look at a guy like Jimmy Johnson, and I say, yes, he is, in my mind, he will make that Final Eight. I'll give it a 75% shot.
There's no question about it.
By the way, the Yankees just went final 5-0. Don't come to our house. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Don't come to our house. Okay, now that we got baseball out of the way, let's get back to racing. I actually could see Jimmy Johnson making it on the points. In Kansas, he runs really well. He's a master at the mile and a half.
Yeah.
I honestly don't worry about Jimmy Johnson. Do I think he's going to win the race? No. Do I think somebody above him, a Ryan Blaney or a Chase Elliott, could have a bad day? I'd rather not see those two guys have a bad day. But those are the guys you look at. You always look at the young guns.
Yeah.
Because experience will beat youth in this sport 9 times out of 10, and that 10th time might be a fluke if it does happen. So I don't fear Jimmy Johnson not making the playoffs. My fear is that we're looking at we're looking at 2 former champions right now, Kyle Busch and Matt Kenseth, sitting in a very bad spot. We have an up-and-comer in Ricky Stenhouse sitting in a very bad spot. Jamie McMurray, good guy, good race car driver. Not a guy. If I had to pick one stone cold lock to be eliminated this weekend,
I would have to say either McMurray or Stenhouse, but if I would have to pick one, I definitely have to say Stenhouse.
I'd like to know why.
Well, if you think about it, let's be honest. The only time that the 17 team has been pretty dominant has been on the super speedways. And I'm looking on their mile and a half results, and I just look at it, they're not really like as great. I mean, if you look at it, you have 13th at Atlanta, 33rd at Las Vegas, 14th at Texas, and then 11th at Kansas, 15th at Charlotte, 14th at Kentucky, let's see, and then 13th at Charlotte. So, I mean, I look at his results. I mean, they're not really like as bad, but if he's going to finish mid-pack on Sunday, that's not going to get him, to the next round. But I would say that if the 17 team, is in desperate mode trying to make it into the next round, they're going to have to win on Sunday. But, it's going to depend on what the other guys, between the cutoff line and then the guys on the cutoff line, do on Sunday. But, I mean, I just look at Stenhouse and quite frankly, I mean, I don't see him making it to the next round. And even if he does make it, he's definitely not going to make it into the championship four. I mean, he's had luck this year because he won at Talladega and Daytona. Yeah, those are the two races that he won, to make it into the playoffs. But I said to myself, okay, this was going to be a sleeper team because if you go to the playoffs, the only race that Stenhouse could have won was Talladega. And then last Sunday, they got caught up in that big wreck, and that took him out of contention. Now you go to Kansas, and he's only like 68 points, or either a couple points behind the cutoff line. So now that team is going to have to do everything they can, to make it into the next round.
Right. And before I read this list, this will be when we talk about Kansas in just a few minutes going forward on the Monster Energy Cup Series. Who did you pick last week, lock and sleeper? I'm curious to know how they finished, because I can tell you right now, I picked Ricky Stenhouse to be my lock. Yeah, that didn't happen. And I went with the field, so technically I'm a winner.
I think my lock was either Stenhouse or Dale Jr. I can't remember what was it last week.
Okay. Well, if you don't remember, not the worst thing ever.
No.
But again, let's look at that. Let's look at the top 10, starting with Brad Keselowski, who was the winner. Ryan Newman,
Yep.
Again, he's been making noise lately. I'm wondering if he's got one more good run left in him, and he wasn't a fluke making the playoffs this year.
Well, I was watching him on Sunday, and I really thought he was going to win the race. But the question was, with 14 cars that were running like near the end, I was actually questioning, like, who is he going to run with? Because the Fords were pretty fast all weekend, with the Penske's and the Richard Petty's, and then the Roush Fenways and whatsoever, and the Stewart Haas's and so forth. But I would say that if Newman would have won the race, he could have had drafting help right near the end. But the two Penske cars, they were pretty strong, and especially Keselowski and whatsoever. But I don't know. I mean, I look at Newman, I would say that, next year could be a little bit of a make or break season for him. I mean, he's been at Childress for like the last few years. And let's be honest, he won a race at Phoenix, and that's like the first time in a long time he won a race. But I mean, I would have to say next year, not only Newman, but the whole entire Richard Childress camp, in the Cup and Xfinity series, they're going to have to run pretty successful, and, they're going to have to run near the front and, finish in the top 10 every week.
Oh, without a doubt. Well, going down that top 10 again, finishing third, Trevor Bayne, not a guy who makes a lot of noise unless his car is hitting the wall. Joey Logano making another strong run. A little too late? No big deal. He's Joey Logano. He's going to be back in the mix next year. Eric Almirola comes in fifth. Okay, every now and again, play for the top 10.
Yeah.
He can move along. Denny Hamlin, another contender, finishes sixth. Dale Earnhardt Jr. seventh. Casey Kane 8th. Gray Galding comes away with a 9th place finish, and David Reagan 10th. Let's take those two names real quick and play a little what if. What if the big one hadn't happened? Do we see Galding and Reagan in the top 10?
I would say so. No question. Yeah.
See, I would say Reagan only because he's always at these tracks like Daytona and Talladega. David Reagan is always a player.
Yeah.
This year, maybe I wouldn't have seen him in the top 10. I could picture him in the top 15, top 20. Ninth. Congrats to him for a team like that. But that's the name I would say. In my opinion, had the big one not happened, Gray Galding doesn't make the top 10.
I would say so.
Well, let's run it down. We already gave you the top 10. Ty Dillon was 11th, Paul Menard 12th, Kyle Larson surprisingly 13th, Matt Kenseth 14th, Daniel Suarez 15th, Chase Elliott 16th, and this is where some sort of damage or engine issue or the big one, etc. I'll just throw a few names out. Chase Elliott 16th, Kevin Harvick 18th, Martin Truex Jr. 23rd, Jimmy Johnson 24th. 26th, Kyle Busch, 27th. Clint Bowyer, 35th. Go on because there's a couple names even lower. Eric Jones, 36th. Jamie McMurray, 37th. The big one took a lot of these guys who were running well throughout this entire race and basically turned this race upside down, but that's Talladega, and we've mentioned that before. Things that you see at the bottom, I don't think I've ever seen this many contenders in quite some time, starting with Harvick, Allmendinger, Truex, Johnson, Stenhouse, Kyle Busch. Half your playoffs were involved in wrecks.
Yep.
So now that we've gotten that out of the way, we'll give you the updated points going forward for the Cup Series. Dun, dun, dun. I just wanted to sing, so pardon me. We'll start at the bottom and work our way up. Is in 12th, 75 points back. With 68 points back. Matt Kenseth, 10th, 54 points back. 9th, 53 points back. Jimmy Johnson, 8th, 46 points back. Ryan Blaney, 7th, 44 points back. 33 points back. 32 points back. 4th, 31 points back. Did I skip Denny Hamlin, or did I get Denny Hamlin?
No, you got Hamlin.
Okay, well, we already said Harvick, too. Kyle Larson in 3rd. Brad Keselowski, last week's winner, or this week's winner, I'm sorry. 19 points back. Last week's winner was Martin Truex Jr. So with one race to go, we already talked about who you think potentially, who is, say, from Johnson up. Obviously, you can't pick Truex. You cannot pick Keselowski.
Okay.
Say from Larson to Johnson.
Okay.
If you had to pick one guy who's definitely going to walk away, to be your overall pick for Kansas, but you could see with a victory this weekend. Who do you think it is?
So I'm looking at the list, and we go to a 1.5 mile racetrack, and there were some guys that were pretty good on the 1.5 miles this year. I mean, besides Larson and Kyle. I mean, besides Larson and Truex, I would have to say one guy that you're going to have to watch out for is definitely Kevin Harvick, because if you go back to Chicago, he ended up finishing 3rd, and this could be a team that, of course, with the beer can, cheers on that. So I mean,
Always.
This could be a team that, could be a force to be reckoned with, this weekend, because, the Ford team has been pretty good, whenever it comes to the 1.5 mile racetracks this year. And let's say that if he goes to the next round, I think he has a really great shot at making it into the Final Four. Why? Because you go to Phoenix, where he's been pretty successful the last couple of years. And, let's be honest, he didn't get off to a great start this year. I mean, of course, he had the whole thing in Atlanta whatsoever, and then he had the one at Sonoma. But I think this could be one of the Fords, that could possibly make a run, to the Final Four.
Absolutely. And I'll throw a little swig of Kevin Harvick cheer at you just real quick. Mm-hmm. But I think you're right. And I don't know if I've asked you this question yet over 8 weeks. Will Chase Elliott win a race before this year is over?
I think so. I mean, the last time the guys ran the 1.5 miles, Chase finished 2nd at Charlotte, and this could be another one where I expect the 24 team, to be the one to watch. And I was watching the race last week, and I was pulling for the 24 car to win, at Talladega. Not only that, it was also in Earnhardt country, and of course, there were some fans that there were fans of Elliott throughout the years, and then of course he got caught up in that big wreck. I think it was like 5 laps to go, or a multi-car wreck whatsoever. But I think this could be a team that could win a race, maybe like 1 or 2 races. But, I think this is going to be a one to watch this year. And, even if I say that if he doesn't win a race or if he fails to make the next round, I think he had a good season. And, and even though he's down on himself, whenever he loses a race, just remember, there are a lot of great drivers that have lost some great races the last couple of years. I mean, there could be guys like Kyle Busch, Matt Kenseth, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart. The list goes on. I mean, and if you see those guys down by themselves, I mean, it's, that's the way the racing goes. I mean, it's a lot of emotion. It's a lot of passion. And, everybody wants to win on any given weekend. But I would have to say, Chase Elliott, could be the one to watch for this weekend. And if you go to the next round, coming up, I think he could be another one, that could probably be a force to be reckoned with all these tracks that are coming up. That could be good for him.
I'll agree with every bit of that. So Xfinity had the week off this past week. Yep. They come back with a vengeance at Kansas this week. Tennessee in the Kansas Lottery 300.
So, even though that there's not going to be a lot of Cup guys running this weekend. I would have to say that with the start of the round of 8, this is going to be this round where we're going to determine who the final 4 are going to be running for the championship at Homestead in November. And I could make this clear. I still think you're going to see 3 of the Junior Motorsports guys make it in, based on points or based on wins whatsoever, because, no matter how, like, the Cup guys either win a race whatsoever. But my 4th guy, and if I would have had to pick one right now, I would definitely have to say Cole Custer. And the reason why I'm picking
Why is that?
The reason why I'm picking him is, you're going to Kansas this weekend. And the last time Custer was on the 1.5 mile racetrack, you look at the last 2 that he's been on the 1.5 miles. You go back to Chicago. He battled for the lead for Kyle Larson the last couple laps, like the whole entire day, and, gets himself a top 5 finish. Then you go to Kentucky. He ends up winning the first 2 stages, finishes in the top 5. So the reason why I'm picking this team, this could be a sleeper that could probably clinch themselves to make it into the championship 4. And they've had some good runs on the 1.5 miles throughout the last recent weeks. And, and I would say that if the 00 can have a really good run this weekend, possibly win the race, I think he could have a good shot at advancing to the final 4.
Oh, I don't doubt that at all. That is a great view on that. One of the guys I'm really watching this weekend, and I'm looking forward to seeing him do well. The last few races, he has been top 5, top 10. My lock for the week, and I'll start the parade right now. My lock for the week is Brennan Poole in the 48. Where he breaks out. He's going to cement himself into that championship 4. Unfortunately, somebody has to get bumped. And as I'm watching, as the playoffs have gone on, I think it's going to be Elliott Sadler that he's going to bump out of that spot.
I would say my lock would definitely have to be Cole Custer because, like I said, this kid has been really good on the 1.5 miles the last few weeks. And I think, this could be that shot where, he could win a race this weekend. And then another guy that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on now, even though he's not running full-time in the Xfinity Series, but he is going to be running in 2018, it's definitely going to be Christopher Bell because, of course, what he's done in the Truck Series the last 2 years has been pretty successful. He's been driving with a really good team, has won a lot of races, finished in the top 5. And now that he's going to Joe Gibbs Racing next year in the Xfinity Series, it's going to be very interesting to see how this kid does. And, like I said, the kid has a lot of talent, and he's driving with a really good team and he's driving with a really good cars, and really good equipment. And I think that this could be a kid that, I'm going to be keeping my eye on, in the playoffs next year. And, now do I think he could win the championship next year? I mean, it's definitely a maybe because the last few years, I think you've had probably one Xfinity driver win the championship in his first full season, and that guy was Chase Elliott back in 2014. And, quite frankly, it could possibly happen. But if you look at the playoffs next year, just remember this. The Charlotte race is going to be on the Roval. Now, basically half track, half road course. I mean, I've actually saw videos on YouTube the last few days. There were actually drivers testing on the brand new Roval that's coming up in September. And this, not only Talladega is going to be the wild card next year, but the Roval race, in my opinion, it's definitely going to be the wild card as well. Because if you think about it, the fans wanted a road course in the playoffs. As a result, boom, NASCAR says, you know what, we're going to put Charlotte Roval next year. So then that ought to way, you'll have the 1.5 miles, the 3/4, the super speedways and whatnot. Now you're going to have a road course in the playoffs for 2018, which I really think it's going to be exciting. So at first I said to myself, I don't understand why Charlotte's having a road course race. But then on second thought, I said, you know what? I'm just going to watch it just to see how it all plays out. And then once I saw the cars testing on the brand new Roval, I said, this could be very exciting next year because even though I love road course racing and, with road courses, you just never know what's going to happen. And of course, when you're going down to that first turn, left and right whatsoever, the question's going to be is, who's going to make it getting out of that first corner and who's going to end up stick, once they get down in the first turn, the first straightaway whatsoever.
Somewhere producer Eddie Focus is smiling because if that's the case next year during the playoffs, they use the Roval as they call it, which is Charlotte and half road course. They're going to turn right, Eddie, wherever you are. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah. So
we'll throw some steaks on the grill.
So not only the Cup guys are going to be running on the Roval, but the Xfinity guys are going to be running on the Roval next year as well.
And that's going to throw, depending on how the teams set the cars up, and I know for the road courses like Sonoma, like Watkins Glen, there's a certain setup you need to use. It's thrown in here, and I think it's going to be exciting, is half the race is going to be run on the traditional Charlotte track. Comes your left and right-hand turns.
Yep.
The question I'd love to ask any crew chief, and if we can ever get one on the show, I want to know, how exactly do you set up a car half super speedway?
I mean, you're definitely going to have a really good car. Probably shocks, maybe chassis-wise or so, but yeah, you're going to have a really good car that's going to have some good brakes because, of course, road course, you need to have brakes and you need to have a good shifter as well because if you don't have any brakes going to the corners, then you don't have a good shot to win. But my other question is, and I was actually looking at one of the articles. They said that, okay, so now next year we're going to have the Bank of America 500, but the question is, are we going to have it with 500 kilometers? Because let's say that if we have the Roval next year, it's not going to be 334 laps. So if anybody's thinking about that, no. So what NASCAR is probably thinking of doing is if they're going to have it 500 kilometers, it's probably going to be a 130 lap race, to make up like the whole 500 kilometer distance whatsoever. And then, of course, you got Watkins Glen, which, you got 90 miles and so forth. And then you got Sonoma, which you have 110 laps and, which those times are basically like 2 hours, to run those races. With the Charlotte race, it's probably going to be right around that mark or so forth, but it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. And I'm actually really excited for next year's playoffs as well.
It's going to be exciting, and I'll get my sleeper in real quick for Kansas this weekend. It's almost as if you had my house bugged earlier because, as you know, I write these down every week, so next week I can reference it back. There it is. There's my sleeper, Christopher Bell. He was running this weekend. I immediately knew he was going to be my sleeper pick.
Yeah.
He's, again, domination on the truck series. He's going to run full-time on Xfinity next year.
Yep.
A guy like Ryan Preece this year who's going to go out and show the world, my name is Christopher Bell, and you need to pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
But moving forward to the Cup Series, I just want to read this list real quick. Obviously, mile-and-a-half track, there's a bunch of guys you think of when it comes to mile-and-a-half tracks that are dominant. Back as far as June 2011. And I'll start with that. These are the winners, the past winners on Kansas since June of 2011.
Okay.
Keselowski, Hamlin, Kenseth, Gordon, although no longer a player. He's on the list. We got to talk about him. Logano, Johnson, Kyle Busch, Harvick, and nobody's surprised, Martin Truex.
Right.
Repeating here. This is one of those tracks like Phoenix. This is one of those tracks like back in the early days of California when if Gordon didn't win it, Rusty Wallace won it. There's only a handful of guys that you can really look at and say, this guy's going to dominate the race. The problem with this list is that there's that one name race in Kansas that is kicking the snot out of everybody on the circuit, and that's Martin Truex Jr. Winner, he is the guy that everybody's chasing this year, and every time you think you can count him out.
Right.
So, having said that, Truex Jr. this week, I think if you're going to take somebody, it's got to be somebody with something to prove and needs to punch their ticket to the next round. So, I'm picking the 4 car for my lock, Kevin Harvick.
Okay.
He's got a lot to prove. He was running fantastically in Talladega. There were times where he would sneak right up front. And then the big one.
Yeah.
Stage, he played that game where I'm going to drop back into the 30s. I'm going to let things happen in front of me. Let the first stage go. Second stage, I'm going to pound it out. I'm going to get back to the front, which he did. And then the dust up with Jamie McMurray just took him right out.
Yeah.
Lock. My sleeper, I'm debating whether or not this is going to be my sleeper for the rest of the season, only because, by gosh, if you're going to go out, kid, go out with a win. Is my sleeper for Kansas. Not the best at 1.5-mile tracks. A couple weeks, he has been creeping back forward.
Yeah.
And I would like to see him go out with a win. Gordon got to go out with a win. Why not have Dale Earnhardt Jr. go out with a win?
I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm hoping that he wins a race before the season's out. And also, by the way, if Dale Jr.'s ended up watching this, congratulations to him and his wife. They're expecting a baby girl coming up in May. So our congratulations to him, and we wish him the best of luck when he retires. And, and also, Dale, you're going to be a dad for the first time. So so it's not going to be easy, but, you'll get used to it, though.
Get used to it. I learned new and exciting things that I never wanted to learn every day of my life when it comes to my daughter and my stepdaughter. Right. It's congratulations, Dale and Amy. Anytime a newly married couple comes right out and boom, within the first year, here comes the child. So, and especially a guy like Dale Earnhardt Jr., you've made your money. You can sit back and you can do the things that most dads can't do. You're going to be able to be there every single day of this young lady's life. So, yeah. And now, before we go any further, picks.
So, my lock for this weekend, I mean, there's just no doubt in my mind, I'm just going to have to pick the 78 because, they've just been the dominant ones that have been on the 1.5 miles this year. And then, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up winning the race on Sunday. And not only if he wins, he just wants to collect the most stage points as he can. So my sleeper pick, this one was kind of a little bit tough to choose, but I would have to go with Ryan Blaney, because if you look back at the spring race back in May, he had a really good car. Not only, and I think he won the pole, and I think he won probably one stage race or so. And there was actually one race at Texas where he won 2 stage races and then, of course, didn't get the victory. But I would have to say Blaney's going to be a sleeper in my pick because, with the Wood brothers, of course, they're aligned with Team Penske. I think, this could be the dark horse, to be the one to watch. And that'll be my picks for this weekend.
Choices, both of them. I did find the article, Clinch Scenarios for the Elimination Race at Kansas. I'll go over these real quick. We have a little time to kill. Okay. Starting with the third position, Kyle Larson, by scoring 34 points. Not too hard.
Okay.
Kevin Harvick clinches, scoring 41 points. And clinches a spot by scoring 42 points. Okay. And you guys all know the point breakdown. You get this. You're watching us, so you're a racing fan. You understand it.
Yeah.
Elliott clinches a playoff spot by scoring 43 points. Ryan Blaney clinches a playoff spot by scoring 53 points. Now, we talked about this earlier. Jimmy Johnson. But if an already clinched driver wins the race, and he has to score at least 49 points, which equates to, like we said earlier, taking at least one stage and finishing third or higher. Plus, he could finish like third in the second. Say you win stage 1, you finish third, stage 2, knocking it down just a little bit. I don't think they took that into account when they did this, but that's just me. Kyle Busch, Matt Kenseth, Ricky Stenhouse, Jamie McMurray, the only way in this weekend.
Yeah.
Kind of scenario any driver wants to look at. Let's be completely honest. I'm looking at the paint schemes. I wish you guys could see these right now. Some of them are pretty standard. I like Casey Kane with his green number 5 UniFirst. The 17 for breast cancer awareness, Ricky Stenhouse. Kyle Busch could run in a paper bag. I wouldn't care. These are really nice.
Yeah.
I wish Dale Jr. on the way out would have his last call, or Jeff Gordon, or whoever it was. Mark Martin had the salute to you.
Yeah.
special paint schemes on the way out. It kind of seems anticlimactic that Junior's just going out. And for a guy that's the most popular driver, you'd figure you'd want to give the fans something special.
Right. Well, of course, Junior's going to have that retro Budweiser scheme at Homestead in November, which, of course, that was back in like 1999 and so forth. And I actually, when I first looked at this car, I thought this was like amazing. Like, it definitely had the Budweiser colors, back from like the late 90s and so forth. But one of my friends was telling me that, I wonder, how much copyrights they had to take out of BO because they didn't want to like have like the DEI like paint scheme or whatever it was whatsoever. But that's going to be that one paint scheme that Junior's definitely going to go out with, and I really can't wait to see that car go out on the racetrack. And if he were to win at Homestead, that would be like pretty much the icing on the cake.
Obviously, that's like a big time championship boxer going out in that very last fight. You get your hand raised in victory.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anybody watching this that isn't going to miss the presence of Dale Earnhardt Jr. going forward in 2018 and beyond. He's a relatively young guy,
yeah,
in comparison to me, but but he's a relatively young guy. He could have had 10, 12 more years, but again, I wonder if some of this isn't the specter of what happened to his dad, as call it a day as early as he does. What is he, 39, 40 years old?
I think he's like around 41, I believe, 42.
The Google machine now, so I'll let you
Okay.
let you speak on that. Do you think that what happened to his father in 2001 hastened his decision to retire?
I would probably say yes and no. I mean, if you go back to when he had those concussions the last few years, I mean, that pretty much determined, like, okay, like, how much longer am I going to race? Like, what happens if I get into another crash and then I have another concussion? Quite frankly, like, it can basically take me out of, like, either, like, the rest of the season, or it could probably cost me my career. So I think the reason why Junior made that announcement back in April saying that I'm going to retire from full-time racing was definitely, I would have to say the concussions, because and you hardly don't see any concussions in racing at all. But when Junior had that first one, I think it was at Kansas a couple of years ago, that pretty much had NASCAR on a wake up call, saying like, okay, like if we have drivers suffering a concussion inside the car, then we're definitely going to have a concussion protocol, which of course NASCAR has been doing for the last few years. And I think with Junior, yeah, I mean, I was a little bit, nervous, this season that he was going to be racing again, considering the fact that he was out for like half the season, due to concussion-like symptoms. But if you look at it, there has been runs where, he was good. And then, of course, he had the BS runs whatsoever. But, like you said earlier, the last few races, he's been creeping up there in the top 10. And, I am interested to see how he's going to go out in these next few races. And if he can win a race, before the season's out, definitely be great for Junior Nation.
Oh, without question. And to answer everybody's question, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is 43 years old. His father unfortunately passed away at 49. Yep. So 6 years. I'm not saying that's the reason he's retiring, but I'm sure it's always on his mind. Everybody asking questions about his father. Everybody.
Yeah.
He definitely has made his own mark. Here's just a small list. 1998 and 1999 Busch Series champion. Yep. 2004 and 2014 Daytona 500 winner. Winner of then known as the Winston. He won the Bud Shootout in Daytona 2003 and 2008. 04, 08, 15, and 16, he was a Can-Am Duel winner, which back in the day was the Gatorade Duels.
Yep.
Popular driver 14 times from 2003 to 2016. And obviously, we don't have our most popular driver this year, but come on, guys. Let's be honest. We all know who it's going to be.
Yeah.
And he was the most popular driver on the Busch Series, now the Xfinity Series, in 1999. He's run 626 races over 19 years. His first win was the 1999 Coke 600 in Charlotte. The last race he's run, we all know, was last weekend, and his last race ever will be at Homestead in November.
Mm-hmm.
First race. That wasn't his first win. His first win was in Texas, 2000. Yep. His last win was in Phoenix, 2015 Quicken Loans Race for Heroes 500.
Yep.
26 wins overall, 15 poles. That's just on the Cup Series. We don't have to go into lengthy what Dale Earnhardt Jr. means. Retired, and I'm sure in the future when Jimmy Johnson retires, there's going to be a lot of fans like me reluctantly are going to say, you know what, I tip my hat to that guy. But Dale Jr. is the guy who I'm going to tip my hat to anyway. Shadow to overcome, and kid, you did it. So congratulations, enjoy retirement.
Enjoy retirement, Junior. And all I can just say is, he's definitely going to go to the Hall of Fame for sure with, the most popular driver awards, two-time Daytona 500 champion. There's no question to doubt he's going to be in the Hall of Fame in the next few years.
Oh, absolutely. And there are guys with less wins or even on the Busch Series, less championships that have gone in simply because they were tough competitors and their name you're always going to remember. Being the most popular driver is kind of like kissing your sister sometimes if you don't follow it up. But here's a guy bumping and banging every single week, never takes a back step. He doesn't make excuses. And that's a guy who, while he's not my favorite driver, respect. So, yeah, Hall of Fame, absolutely, 100%. So do you have anything to plug this week before we say our goodbyes to the fine folks?
So like I said earlier, follow me on Twitter at NASCAR Indy. Follow me on Facebook, NASCAR IndyCar Central. Visit our website, NASCARindy.org. I post blogs, news, videos from like Radioactive, the full races and whatsoever. Also, I want to give my congratulations to Harrison Burton. He won the K&N Pro E-Series Championship a few weeks ago. And congratulations to Doug Coby. He won the Whelen Modified Championship this past weekend. So my big question to you, and guys, just so you know, so my New England Patriots are playing Chris's Atlanta Falcons on Sunday night. So, Chris, without further ado, what's your prediction on the score?
If you'd asked me this last week before we played the Miami Dolphins, it might have been different. But you have to say that, I'm sure there's nobody out there in Falcon Nation that hasn't forgotten February. And when you want to look at the two records, I've taken a lot of guff because obviously we live in the heart of Patriots country.
Yeah. Already
claiming the collapse of the Falcons, and I have to point to them and say, look at this, look at the records. We've lost to teams we should have beaten, and we've beaten teams we should have lost to on both sides. It'll be a close game. 31-28 Atlanta.
So, guys, just remember, so after the race, tune in for the Patriots-Falcons game. That is on 8:30 on NBC. So it should be a fun game. So will we see another comeback? Well, we'll just have to see, because I'll have to admit this. This year's Super Bowl, I mean, even though my Patriots won, of course, sorry to your team and so forth, I will have to admit this, probably one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time in NFL history, and you're never going to see a Super Bowl like that ever again. And real quick, that Super Bowl that night broke a lot of records. Like lot of records. Not only that broke a lot of records, but social media just absolutely blew up. Like literally just blew up that night. It was just unbelievable. But yeah, it should be a fun game on Sunday. So may the best team win. Go Pats.
Well, you beat me to it. I was going to say the best team will win, and it will be Atlanta. But we wait. That's why we play the game.
Wait. All right,
guys. If you are movie fans, click our Fandango link or any of our links. Keep the show going. They don't charge you anything extra. You get your movie tickets and a free poster for the Star Wars tickets. You can go to Amazon. Everybody shops Amazon. Click that link. They don't charge you anything extra. They kick back a little to the show, which helps the Loki and Jabroni show and C&J Speedway review. Because Ed's got some big things he wants to do as the producer, and we're hoping to show them to you, but we can't do that without your help. Also, www.patreon.com/Loki and Jabroni. I know it sounds like I'm shilling for the other show, but it all goes into the same pot to this digital network that we're building, which includes the C&J Speedway review. So, guys, engage with your friends. Get people on the YouTube page. Get people moving traffic to LokiandJabroni.com. That you do every day, shopping at Amazon, WWE, Mars Hydro, any one of our fantastic affiliates and this.
That's right.
Better, Corey. You are a wordsmith.
Well, you know me. I mean, I just try to get all the facts I can, and that's why I just love this sport. Ever since 2005, it's just been amazing, and never stops.
Well, it's fun. It's fun to have this outlet every week because, unfortunately, around here, that watch NASCAR as regularly as I do.
Right.
They like the sport. They watch the sport, but if they miss a weekend, they're like, "Oh, what did I miss?" I'm like, "Oh, damn, I missed the race, son of a." So, outlet, and we're having a great time. We're growing slowly, but we are growing. So, guys, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Joining and being a part of this fantastic venture.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you guys next week.
Good night.